But your
so
work
they
is
work
racist,
into
though. Your work is racist.
That's a lot of hooey.
Your site calls for investigation of me, like his site. He is called to investigate me. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
do
you read your
you
own
do
site?
call for the death penalty for apostasy and so on.
He has 4 articles on his site dedicated just to me that I need to be investigated because I don't agree with LGBT.
May I respond?
On his site. The thing about Robert Spencer, and I'm glad that he brought up this issue of racism, he is a racist. Like his site, anytime a Muslim anywhere or any Middle Easterner, doesn't have to be a jihadi or doesn't have to be a Muslim even, commits a crime, he puts it on his site and says, oh, jihadi, Islamic terror. And he creates this fear-mongering against immigrants. And imagine if you had a site dedicated to whenever a Jewish person committed a crime, you say, oh, Judaic violence, and you called your site Jew Watch. Or anytime a black person committed a crime, say, oh, Black Watch, this is black terror, this is black crime. That's what he does to Muslims, and he's had a long career of this. He was involved in the same counterterrorism work with the Republicans that he's now decrying and saying, oh yeah, I disagree with that. You were a part of that effort. You were a part of those administrations.
Daniel, you're lying.
Them.
You're lying again. I did advise the FBI when I was invited. I advised the FBI and military groups, CIA a couple times. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And that was mid-level people who invited me who were trying to change the point of view of the higher-ups. And that's why I got in.
Yeah,
that's not
like
constitute
me as terrorists.
And I wrote...
I have the CIA.
No, you're lying.
These 3-letter agencies
Daniel,
on me because of the kinds of work...
You're defaming me and you're lying, and I need to have a chance to respond. Yeah, there are 4 articles there. How many articles are at Jihad Watch? About 80,000, going back 20 years.
Muslims like
there are 4 that mention you, and 3 of them I didn't write. So I'm not entirely versed on everything they say.
Mainstream Muslim speakers like me, and you depict them as terrorists,
you are not
as hate mongers who need to be investigated.
You are a hate monger, and you approve. Did you not approve of the Taliban?
I approve of many Muslim governments.
Do you approve of the Taliban? Yes or no? You always do that.
I do approve of the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan.
Okay, great.
Yes, I do.
So I track jihad.
Do you approve of
excuse me.
Do you approve of the Russian Orthodox Church invading Ukraine?
No.
No, you don't? So you denounce the Russian Orthodox?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, your own church, great.
The hierarchy. That's not my church.
It's par for
You're not Orthodox.
Robert.
I am Orthodox. You have you have no understanding of Christianity.
You've denounced the Bible.
I am Greek Orthodox.
Jesus. Okay,
no,
I guess it's
you're
fine.
lying again. You set up these straw man.
But the point is that he's racist. He's been cited by terrorists. Anders Breivik, who killed about 100 people in Norway, cited Robert Spencer. He said, read everything from Robert Spencer about Islam.
Am I going to have
he gets endorsed from terrorists.
He keeps multiplying these things. And so you have to allow for some time.
Would you accept with a site called Jew Watch? Answer that.
It's not an analogy. If my sites were Muslim Watch, then yeah, you would have a point. But it's not. It's Jihad Watch. And jihad is people killing innocent people, terrorist activities, flying the planes into the buildings on 9/11, and so I track jihad activity.
Muslims didn't fly any planes into anything.
Excuse me, you are interrupting again. And you were trying to make sure that I can't answer this defamation because you know that it's lies and you want to make sure the truth doesn't get out. But the fact is that the site tracks jihad activity, and it is a lie that if a Middle Eastern or a Muslim person commits a crime, I put that on the site. I only put it on the site if there is justification for the behavior in Islamic texts and teachings.
You think that Islam advocates for random killing of people? That's false.
There are plenty of Islamic authorities that I can give you
there are plenty
who justify that kind of thing.
Verses in the Bible that justify that kind of thing. So anytime a Jew commits a crime,
you are interrupting yet again.
You put it on a site and call it Jew Watch.
Excuse me. There are plenty of Muslims who will justify, Muslim clerics who justify the behavior, and I give the quotes.
People that have been condemned.
Excuse me.
We can give them.
And as far as Breivik goes, I knew this was going to come up at some point. It is a total lie. It was a total lie from the beginning, and I was ready for it. So I actually have what Breivik actually said. The Muslims showed us that deadly shock attacks are the only tool we have at the moment, which will guarantee that our voice is heard. That's on page 1351 of his insane
Read what he says about you.
Yeah.
Read what he says about you.
He quotes me, and he quotes a lot of other people.
He says, I recommend everything Robert Spencer has written on Islam. Did he say that or not? Did he say that or not?
Say that.
Okay.
Now, do you realize what you're saying here, what you're getting yourself into here?
No, I just want to make me. You have the same.
Excuse me. You keep talking over me because you do not want the truth to get out.
You asked me a question.
Now,
you asked me a question.
Breivik
you have the same ideology as Breivik. You have the same anti-immigrant ideology as Breivik.
Breivik actually criticized me because I would not call for violence.
Can you unpack for the audience what you guys are talking about?
Breivik is this crazy man in Norway who killed 77 people at a youth camp. They were not Muslims, incidentally. They were just kids. He was a nut. He was a lunatic, and he wrote this 1,300-page manifesto, which is very suspect. Because, for example, one of the reasons why I'm mentioned many times in it is because in it is the entirety of the script of a documentary I was in 2002. And I asked the producer of the documentary, how did this lunatic get the transcript of the documentary? And he said, I don't know. Not only was it never published, but it was never even made. We never made a transcript. And this guy who speaks broken English in half of his manifesto is suddenly perfectly transcribing over 100-page documentary in which I'm mentioned multiple times and speak multiple times. It's very suspect. And we don't know if it was who was behind it, who was with him. I'm suggesting his manifesto was, yeah.
You don't think he wrote
Obviously, the killing was real, but I think he might have written part of it, but he certainly had help.
He didn't write
Now, anyway, the thing is that he said that the Muslims inspired him to do violence. He says that very clearly. I just gave you the quote. If being quoted by a bad person makes one evil, then the Quran is quoted all the time.
My position.
The Quran
you're
is quoted.
Strawmanning my position.
The Quran is quoted all the time by terrorists. So if I am guilty because Breivik quoted me, then the Quran is guilty because terrorists quoted all the time.
I'm going to give Daniel a chance to respond, and then we have 17 minutes left.
I haven't even finished responding to everything else he said before.
Did you have a follow-up on what you wanted to say?
So the thing is, my point wasn't that, he just cited Robert and that makes Robert bad. That wasn't my point. My point was that Robert shares the same ideology as that terrorist. The terrorist had the view that immigrants are a problem, specifically Muslim immigrants. They cause a problem for Western society. We need to stop immigration. This is a white supremacist, white replacement type of ideology, which Robert either shares or he basically facilitates with his site, which takes any time a Middle Eastern person commits a crime. And the best example, he claims that, we check whether the person has a Muslim background and has some kind of Muslim ideology. This is false. Just recently in June, there was a Syrian who stabbed children in France. And Robert immediately posted up another Muslim jihadi attack on his Twitter. His site put up an article. Then it turns out that this guy is a Syrian who's a Christian. His name is Abdul Masih, which means slave of the Messiah. He's a Christian. And all of the major news reports, BBC, France 24, reported that this was a Christian, actually. Robert doubled down and he said, no, this is a Muslim, and his site continues to have an article up that says this Christian is actually a Muslim who stabbed children in a playground. This shows that's a racist. This is a racist ideology that he's promoting because it's not based on ideology. He just sees a Middle Eastern name and says this is Islamic terror. And that's just one recent example. Many examples of this. Recently, like there was a stabbing
I would
in
like
Brooklyn.
to spend 2 more minutes on this.
Okay,
because
then I have to have a chance to respond.
You have a go forward and respond, and we're going to move on to the next
As far
topic.
as the guy in June goes, he said he was stabbing babies, and he says, praise be to Jesus Christ. Now, this is obviously he's somebody who's trying to imitate whether he's a Muslim who is pretending to be a Christian. ISIS has called for Muslims to pretend to be Christians in the West and carry out terror attacks. So that's a possibility. Also, there were people who knew him who stepped forward, and there were stories about it in the French press that said he was actually a Muslim. So I reported on these things. And I reported when he said he was a Christian, it's all there. It was a developing story, and there were several articles that we had about it. But the idea that there was some deception, much less racism, that's just Daniel trying to demonize somebody who actually agrees. I agree with Daniel about Islam.
That's what I'd like to do.
That's the funny thing about it.
That's why you call for my investigation.